We're talking today with Bob Tarbuck of Morrisville, North Carolina, and the interviewer is James Smither of the Grand Valley State University Veterans History Project. Okay, Bob, can you begin with some background and start with where and when were you born?
I was born in East Liverpool, Ohio, July 9th, 1949.
Okay, and what part of Ohio was that in?
It's right along the Ohio River. It's like it's the northeastern corner, borders Pennsylvania, West Virginia.
All right.
Blue collar town.
Okay, now did you grow up there or did you move around?
Yes, I grew up there.
And what was your family doing for a living then?
My dad was a steel mill worker, and my mother was just stayed at home, house taken care of.
Yeah. Do they still have steel mills there?
I think Weirton Steel's even shut down now. It was bought, employee owned, and I think, but for the most of it, the Shau Valley is pretty much shut down.
Right. And how many kids were in your family?
2.
Okay. Brother, sister?
Older brother, 5 years older. He had enlisted in the Air Force and got turned down because of asthma. I had asthma, but I grew out of it.
Oh, well. And he probably had better timing than you anyway.
Yeah, I guess.
All right. Okay, so then did you finish high school there?
Yes, I graduated in 1968 from East Liverpool High School.
Okay. And then once you were out of high school, what did you do?
Well, I was already working in Homer, Lachlan, China, which is makes the home of the fiesta wear, dinnerware. I was working there junior, senior year on the afternoon turn, and I just kind of sat around like a lot of guys did and just waited to get drafted. I had thought about going to welding school, and I was going to go to build Alaska Pipeline, which was a big thing then. And I was having too good of a time partying, not looking too much at the future.
Yeah. Now, how much did you know about Vietnam at that point?
Well, just what I saw on the news and supposedly fighting communism. And, But I had looked at the other branches in the Air Force and Navy, but they were pretty well filled up because everybody else was trying to get in there. And I thought it might be a good field. I could find something in there that might benefit me. But then the lazy side of me took over, and it's like a lot of young kids.
All right. And so then when do you get your draft notice?
Got the draft notice in March, probably only about 14 days. Like I said, I went in the 2nd
Of April.
April, yeah. So sometime in March, the last week or so of March, 14 days, I was gone.
Okay, and that's 69 then?
Yeah.
All right. And then what was your reaction when you got the draft notice?
Told my boss. That's pretty much it. Yeah, I knew I was going.
Yeah, you expected it, so it wasn't
I knew it was coming.
any great shock. All right. And then where do they send you for basic training?
Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
All right.
Home of the 101st.
Okay. And when you go in there, what kind of reception do you get when you arrive?
At Fort Campbell?
Yeah.
Oh, it was interesting. A lot of screaming, a lot of hollering at you, and keep you confused. And it was a lot different to what I was used to. I'd never been in anything like that before, so it was. But as I look back on it, I think it toughened me up, and whether you like it or not, maybe who I am now. But I also think it helped me get through Vietnam.
All right. Now, when you're first there at Fort Campbell, is there some processing and stuff you do before you get into the regular training?
Well, it's funny when we flew out of Cleveland into Fort Campbell or whatever airport it was close to that, and it was raining. And a rainy night in Georgia was on. That song. I can remember trying to think, God, what's my life going to be like now? Not knowing the unknown. And listening to that song, and then when we got to the induction center, it was late. But the DI got on the bus and started hollering at us as trainees, and just run here, run there, and it just caught everything, kept you off guard. You just never knew what was going to happen next.
Yeah. Now, that first night, did you actually get any sleep, or what did they do?
No. It seems to me we went to the billets and got maybe a couple hours sleep, and we didn't have any bedding or anything. All we did was lay down in these old mattresses and bunk beds, and then the next day they got us up and started processing us. And I think we may have taken some tests, and we got our hair cut, and that's when all the hair left. And then then we drew our clothing, and it was an interesting time because on the it was like there was no normalcy to it. It was just screaming and hollering. I wasn't used to that. I mean, it didn't take long to get used to it. You knew what you had to do, but it was a confusing time, you know, when you're used to staying at home and you know, everything changes.
Right. Now, what kind of people were training alongside you? Where were they from, or were they there?
Well, it was during the draft, so they could have been from anywhere. You know, they were from Michigan, they were Mississippi, or, you know, they were from everywhere. And that was really interesting to see all these different type of different people with you. You know, we had some guys that back then you went to. Sometimes you got a choice: you either go to jail or you went to the military.
Mm-hmm.
So we were in there with guys like that, older guys, and one guy's named Sammy, and I asked him, I said, "Sammy, what are you doing here?" Because he had like 6 kids.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Oh, the judge gave me a option. He said go to jail or go to the Army." So he took the Army.
All right. So do you have any guys in there who maybe had been to college or anything like that?
Oh yes, we had guys in college also, and they, you know, the test I don't think really made any difference, because if they needed 11 Bravo, they made 11 Bravo out of it.
Yep.
If you needed a medic, I mean, it's just whatever. At that time, what I recall, if you enlisted to be in, say you wanted to be in electronics or chopper mechanics or anything like that, you just, when they come down to orders, if they had them, they had them. If they didn't, they made you what they wanted, wherever they needed you.
Right.
So if there was guys in college that wound up being 11 Bravo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so they're kind of getting it. Now, how easy or hard was it for you to adjust to the training regime?
The discipline wasn't bad. I adapted to that quite quickly, but I had been overweight because I had sat around and drank beer and did no exercises of any kind. So I went in, I think I was 172. When I left, I was 148. So they accomplished what they set out to do.
All right. Now, did they give extra attention to the guys who were more overweight? Did they make a fat platoon or something, or just push you a little harder?
Well, some of the guys that were real hard, there were some people that recycled if you couldn't pass the PT test. And, yeah, they recycled you. I didn't have that problem. I wasn't going to let that happen. Usually they put you in another battalion about the same, how many weeks you were into it, they'd put you in with a battalion like that. But that never happened to me. But I did see it happen.
Now, when you were maybe even as far back as when you did your physical and things like that, or when you got to basic training, did there seem to be people who were trying to find ways to just get out?
Oh yeah, I went in with guys that I had never heard of before, a set of twins. Supposedly they had hemorrhoids, and they got out for that. Asthma. I had a friend of mine that couldn't make his arm go straight, so he had broke it when he was young. It didn't heal right. He got out of that, and there was a big guy. I remember in basic training when, after we drew our clothes and they were taking us to the old billets before they separated us by company where we'd be going. There was this big tall guy. Man, he was probably 6'5", and we used to have to throw the duffel bag on our shoulder in double time. Everywhere we went, you double time, especially being an airborne unit. And he drug his duffel bag behind him, and that was back in the days when they could stick the foot up your butt or step on your fingers. I mean, it was, you know, and I don't feel bad about that, because I think that helped me. I think that toughened me up. You know, they may not think that now. They want to give you a timeout card, but we don't ever happen to him. Oh, we could see him. Our buses are pulling out. He's dragging his duffel bag up behind him, and the DI standing behind him and hollering at him, and you know, booting him. And I always thought that was part of training.
All right. Now, when you're on Fort Campbell, are you kind of confined kind of that one chunk of the base, and you're just with your own group, or how does it
Well,
work?
the battalion, and they had Alpha Bravo, and Charlie, and all that through there, and we cycled through as a battalion as far as from the beginning and to the end. I had a couple of friends that had volunteered for the draft a couple of weeks ahead of me, and they tried to get me to do it, and I said, nah. Well, we ended up being a couple of weeks apart. They volunteered, and they were only another battalion over, so it was only like a week's difference in time. yeah, we all trained as a battalion.
But they've got multiple battalions training at once at different stages
Yes.
of their cycle. So
I
a
don't
lot of
remember
guys-
how many, but there were multiples.
Okay. And what kind of facilities do they have to use? Is it World War II
Oh,
stuff? or-
yeah, these were old, yeah. Yeah, they were old and we had hot water. I think the way that worked then, you had to heat and hot water from, there was a particular month in November, and it went on to about March. Otherwise, you had cold water all the time. Usually you had cold water anyhow, because you got the showers, you get enough guys in there, you're gonna run out of water. But yeah, they were old billets.
All right. Now, how long was the basic training?
I'm thinking it was like 8 weeks.
Yeah, pretty likely. Okay. And then what do they, now, while you're in basic, do they tell you at some point what you're going to do next?
Towards the end, yeah, they gave us our MOS, and as infantry, we knew we'd probably be going to either Fort Polk or Fort Dix or some of the other, and if you were going to be mechanized, or artillery, you don't know where you might go. But usually Fort Polk was one of the main ones in Fort Dix.
And you were infantry, right?
Yes.
Okay. So
11 Bravo.
So where did you go?
I went to Fort Dix.
Okay. Now, how would you describe that as a facility compared with Fort Campbell?
I think we got better training at Fort Campbell, and I think they missed out in AIT. We got mostly conventional war type training, which did make a lot of sense. We're training with M14s, which is a good weapon. It's basically better for sniping versus what we were using it for. I liked Fort Campbell better, even though the training was harder. It got a little easier when you went to AIT, but I think the buildings were still just old military buildings, and it is what it is,
Now, at Fort Dix, did you get any chance to go off the base at all?
A little bit. We weren't far from Philadelphia Airport, so some guys would go try to get home for the weekend if you got a weekend off. But most of the time you had duty till at least lunchtime on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And if you went through military standby, there was no guarantee. Yeah, you might get home. There's no guarantee you would get back on time. So it wasn't worth it to me to run it that tight. But I forget the name of the town right outside of Fort Dix. But yeah, we used to go out there. The guy would open up his jacket and say, "Want to buy a watch?" It was one of those typical military town.
All right. And then, all right, do you again have kind of the sort of broad mix of different people there? Or were most of them from the Northeast, or?
No, it didn't seem to be any particular area. It's just, I think where they had room, and if they were making the infantry, I guess they would look at Fort Polk and say, we've got room for X amount of troops here, and wherever else they were doing it. But I knew Polk and Dix were two of the infantry. It seems to me Fort Knox was going to be
Knox was a big base training place, but Knox was armor.
Armor, yeah.
Yeah, and Fort Sill was artillery, and Leonard Wood had engineers.
Well, I wound up in those places because I had re-enlisted after I come back from the military or out of Vietnam.
Yeah. But it's the sort of thing but for the basic, basically you wind up any place, and then AIT, they would have multiple programs.
AIT would depend what your MOS was going to be.
Right. But now at Fort Dix, did they make much of an effort? So you're saying it's good conventional warfare. Did they have anything in that training that was geared toward Vietnam?
Not a lot. They started to introduce the M16 to us. We did escape and invasion type thing, and what they do was just they would take we had a lot of what we called shake and bakes. They went to the NCO Academy, and they got to work in a basic training or an AIT unit for a while before they went over. And what they would do would take us out in the woods in a deuce and a half and drop us off and give us an objective. You had a leader and you shot an azimuth to where you needed to be, and you try to get back there without getting as a POW. But sometimes you had to take things in your own hands. The way you did things wasn't quite right, but that's the way. There wasn't a lot of good jungle training. I got more jungle training when I got to Long Bend and P search training for jungle training than I did, and it was more on OJT.
Right. Now, could you describe a little bit what you did to beat the system when you were at Fort Dix?
We didn't beat the system. We just let them take us capture.
Oh.
we really played the game. And it got pretty rough. I mean, we stomped a few NCOs to keep from being caught. You weren't supposed to be doing that, but you know, if you're going to play the game, let's just do it right. And that was my theory. It took, once the military converted me, and I saw what I needed to do and what I needed to do to survive, then it was my rules.
Right.
You know, you can't expect people to go out there and just, oh yeah, come get me. You know, what do you prove them by that?
All right. Now you, let's see, do they teach you anything at all about the Vietnamese culture, or did they have a mock village or anything like that?
They taught us how to lay out a claymore, some trip flares, anything about the culture. They taught us how to kill chickens as if we were going to try to survive on a wild chicken running around.
But not really how to deal with the people.
No. So it was really a cultural shock when I went over there. When I'm never being around, I'm from a little Midwest town, and I go there and I'm in a different country. And
Right. Now, along with the sort of the shake and bake sergeants who were getting their leadership experience first, did you have some guys training you who had been to Vietnam already?
the drill sergeants were, not the shake and bakes.
Okay.
Yeah, the drill sergeants, most of them were Vietnam vets.
And did they make any effort to tell you anything about what it was like, or what to
They
expect?
emphasized how serious, why we should be paying attention, especially the breaking down an M60 or your 16 or 14, whatever you're disassembling and putting back together, how critical it would be. And he was right. I mean, I was involved in a lot of that. And the best training we got was from the vets that had come back, not what the Army had written down to do. You know, someone would tell you, well, you don't even pay attention to that. It's not even going to be like that.
Now, were there some vets who'd come back that were just kind of disengaged, or they were given jobs but not real helpful, or if they were actually training you, they were better?
Oh, you had your ranges and things that, you know, they made sure that for safety for everybody was the main thing. And part of it, the safety is learning what to do and not do with a weapon. I always thought they were pretty good. What was that? The shake and bakes, and I don't hold anything against them because I had some good shake and bakes. I'm still best of friends with a lot of them we have. It's a tough position to be put in, but the ones I had in AIT were just, they were there because that's where they were told to be. You know, you try to ask a question, you know, about Vietnam. Well, they didn't know. They'd never been there. You can ask one of the drill sergeants. Sometimes they can be more personable than what a lot of people would think. I mean, they have their time when they need to be, and there's different reasons for discipline to have that. But I said most of my training really came on the job over there.
Okay. Now, once you complete AIT, you get some time off before you go to Vietnam, or?
I got about 14 days.
Okay.
And went home and told my parents to sell my car. I said, I'm not going to need that. And I just made the best out of 14 days. And my orders, I had to go to Oakland, California to process.
All right. Now, how long did you have to hang around Oakland before you left?
I wasn't there very long because they had formations about every few hours. And this was after Hamburger Hill. So everybody they were sending over were medics and infantry. You know, they pulled them by MOSs. Yeah, I think I got there in the morning, and that afternoon before 4 o'clock, I was on a bird on my way on the way over.
Okay. And then, was this a chartered commercial jet that they were flying, or?
I'm thinking that was United. Yeah, it was a charter flight. I flew over on United. I think going over, we went to Hawaii, then to Guam, then the 90th replacement in Long Bed, which it was different coming back, but.
All right. Now, when you came into Long Binh, was that during the day or at night?
It was sunup, just starting.
Okay.
Because they were getting rocketed, and which was interesting. And they hustled us off into a bunker, and another crew getting back on and right back out again. You could see the rockets and the muzzle, or you know, the flashes from artillery and different things. Yeah, that was really all the lights were out on the plane. It was a kind of a scary time.
Yeah. You know, this one of our standard questions is, okay, well, what's your first impression of Vietnam? But in this case, you were getting rocketed.
Didn't look good.
Yeah, I'll bet.
No.
Yeah, I mean, did you, in the process of running off the plane or whatever, did you notice, you know, the heat or anything else? Or was
Oh,
that
the
come
heat and
later?
the odor when they broke the doors open on the, it's kind of like North Carolina humidity in August. It just consumes you, and there was an odor, and it's hard to. I can remember the odor, but I can't tell you what it duplicated. You know, it was nasty.
Mm-hmm. Well, is it maybe kind of like just an awful lot of decaying everything because it's just hot and wet?
Yeah, probably.
Or maybe
Moldy.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've never smelt that back here.
But I mean, most people who are over there, it's one of the first things that registers. It's just that smell. Sometimes they just notice the people burning the waste in diesel,
I've done that.
and but that's a different odor.
Yes.
All right. So you get there, they hustle you off the plane, and now what happens to you?
They brought some buses around with wire over the windows because there was a problem, I guess, with the Viet Cong throwing grenades, and that way at least it hit that and would bounce back instead of going into buses. That's what they told me. That was why the wire was on, not to keep us in, to keep everything else out. And then we went to the 90th replacement and was assigned different billets, and then they scheduled us for training, and I can't remember whether it was a 4-day training or I don't remember.
All right. Now, was this just general Vietnam orientation, or was this now the stuff for the 101st?
P training was just general. It was just they had one there, I think maybe one in Cameron.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then what did that consist of?
I got better training doing that. It was you got introduced to the people more so because you had different details, and the villagers was right outside. But they really heavily on weapons and booby traps. You know, we didn't hardly have any booby trap training at all in Fort Dix that I can remember, but we got it all in 90th replacement. So I got more when I got in country.
All right. Now, at this point, do you know what unit you're going to?
Not when I first got there. No, they told us that I'd be going to I Corps when they told me I'd be going with the 101st Camp Evans, and they just had a typhoon up there, and everyone, the permanent party down there, all your Hamburger Hill replacements. Oh boy. But we flew up there and they had a typhoon up there, and I remember going up in the C-130s, and you know the planes just going and dropping, and you know your stomach's starting to come up, and the water blowing in the cracks of the plane. It was quite a ride.
So they had you flying through a typhoon?
That typhoon, it was the aftermath of the typhoon, so it was, turbulence was it was rock and rolled up there.
All right. So they fly you up, and then do you land at Evans or Phu Bai?
At Evans.
Okay. And then what happens when you get there?
Well, I remember someone from the company come up and picked us up because the battalion, a lot of them are getting the replacements, so everybody from each company from the battalion was up there to get their people. And we took us down. We had a formation out in front of the orderly room, I guess you would call it, over there. And then you were directed to where, you know, who you would be assigned to, and what platoon. They were in the field when I got there, and I was there a couple of days and got assigned and went to A Shau Valley because that's where my platoon was, my company.
All right. So what company were you assigned to?
Charlie Company, 2nd of 506.
All right. Okay, and they're in the field, so when a guy comes in and the platoon or the company, was the whole company out at that point? Okay, so what do you do?
Well, for a couple of days, we were only in there a couple of days before they come in. They put us on bunker guard on the perimeter. Each company had a sector of the perimeter they had to protect.
Yeah, and they take you, is there a company area with at least with a sergeant or somebody back there that?
Yeah, there was always, you know, a company clerk, and the first sergeant was there, and the supply sergeant. And, you know, I think I stayed in that hooch one night, and the rest of the time I spent my time out on the bunker line until they come in for a stand down. Is what they did. Battalion did. Well, no, they didn't either. Actually, I got C8 out there with the supply bird in the A Shau Valley. Then we came in for the stand down.
Okay, and do you remember the helicopter ride?
Yeah, that was it was interesting because I wasn't in a helicopter at all until then.
Mm-hmm.
Any kind of a craft like that. Matter of fact, until I was in the military, I'd never been in an airplane.
Yeah. Now, was that just a Huey that you were flying out in, or was it?
Yes.
Okay. And with no doors and
No
seats
doors.
and
Sitting in the doorway with your legs crossed. And when it would bank, you'd think, sure as heck, you were going to come rolling out of it.
all right. And did you take any fire when you were going in, or was it
Not the first time, no.
Okay. So you go out, you join the company out in the field. What sort of reception do you get at that end?
We landed and there was someone, I can't remember, it was a platoon sergeant who came up here and got me. He directed me down to his platoon and to the squad leader. And most of the guys that been there were Hamburger Hill veterans.
Mm-hmm.
So I felt good. I was with, wasn't with a lot of new people. There was a couple of us that went to the field. So, but it was different.
And how did they treat you as the new guy?
They call you Cherry and things, they typical stuff, but the razzing didn't bother me. They tell you, here's what you need to do, here's what you need to know to stay alive.
Okay. So they didn't shut you out completely?
No. Now, I don't know if that's the norm, maybe other places they did. In my company, they didn't do that.
No, it varies widely. It's just, I think, who the guys are at the time and what they've been through, I suppose.
I mean, they're a little reluctant on what they're going to give you to do until you prove yourself.
Mm-hmm.
But I never felt that.
Okay. Now, were they just camped out in the middle of the bush somewhere? Were they on a fire base, or?
No, they were in the field. What we were doing at that time, they were trying to pull out of the A Shau Valley before the monsoons came in.
Right.
And what we were doing is there were some tanks that were buried in the mud, and they're trying to blow everything to leave so nothing could be used from behind. Because where we were at, I could see Hamburger Hill because they pointed it out to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, you see one of those hilltops way off, and they said that's what it was. And these guys were all veterans of Hamburger Hill, and of course they're telling me what went on. And, it's just enough to, God, what am I into here? But that's where I joined them, and it was you knew you were in the field.
Now, how long were you with them before they took you out? Before they take you, fly out, you join them, and then how long are you in the field before you go back in?
We were there maybe 3 or 4 days.
Okay. And during that time, were you doing any patrolling or stuff, or just kind of?
Yeah, I was doing patrolling with the guys. I mean, they didn't stick me out there as point man because I was small, and they did eye me up for a tunnel rat because I was a lot skinnier than I was 148, 5'7", and that was interesting. But I always was with someone who knew what they were doing, and I paid attention.
And during those first few days, did you have any contact?
No.
Okay. So now, what were you doing at night? Do you remember your first night out in the field?
Oh yeah, it was pretty scary, just because of the unknown. You're in a situation, what had happened up on that hilltop, and we had 2 men up all the time pulling guard in that particular area. I guess because of where we happened to be and what they had gone through, and at the time it was they were working in a company area, so they could have a little tighter positions and have more people to work with. But it's a lonely place to be when you're coming stateside and you're ejected into that. A lot goes through your head.
Yeah. Now, about how many men do you think were in the platoon when you joined it?
Boy, I don't know. It seemed to be fairly up to strength. I know after we come back in out of the field, it was up to strength. I just don't remember how many.
Okay. And what does up to strength actually mean?
Well, I think we were looking at maybe about 28.
Okay. Because paper strength, it should be more like 40 or something like that.
Yeah.
But nobody ever had
Perfect world, yeah.
Maybe in 1965. But
I never saw it
right
like that.
Okay. So you're out there with a few days, and you at least get acquainted a little bit with what you're dealing with, and then they fly you back out again. You go back to Evans then?
Back to Evans.
Okay.
We went in for a battalion stand down, 0 weapons and train, and then we were going to the DMZ.
All right. So how long did you stay at Evans at that point then?
Oh, I don't think standout lasted any more than about 4 days.
Okay.
You never stayed in very long.
Now, when you came in for a standout and so forth, then do people sort of do things to unwind? I mean, do they go get
Oh, yeah, they
beer
drink.
or
Yeah.
pot or whatever?
Played poker, yeah, there was some pot smoking. I mean, you had one hooch that drank and played poker. You had another hooch that drank him, smoked pot and played, poker. And it just, I never saw anything hard drugs or anything. And,
All right. So you're there for a few days, and then what next?
we flew into the DMZ into Mylock. It was an airstrip, and we were getting ready to go up, push up in. The battalion was to push up in there the next day, and I wound up. I think it was 158 Aviation was in there, and one of the crew chiefs happened to be from my hometown, and I ran into him there. And actually, back up a little bit, when I was in town for back in the base for training, I ran into another one of my buddies from my hometown. And his name was Danny Smith, and he wound up being my squad leader. He was a shake and bake coming over, and I was in a mess hall, and I looked over and saw him because I knew him from back home and hollered at him, and so we got together, and I found out later that he was going to be my squad leader, and so that was good. And so I have a picture of the crew chief on the chopper, and him and I on Mylock on the airstrip there, having a picture taken together. But then we, like I say, we just went up into the DMZ at that point.
All right. And then did you run into NVA up there?
Yeah, we had. I don't remember which platoon was ahead of us, but they got ambushed, and they ran into heavy fire. A couple people killed, and
And then could you hear that from where you were?
oh yeah, we weren't that far
Okay.
apart.
And what did your platoon do when stuff happened?
We pulled up forward to support them and help pull the bodies back, and then we had to call an airstrike because they were in a bunker, and they had given me the 90 to carry. This is a 148 guy carrying this 90 recoilless huge thing.
You're carrying a recoilless rifle out around in the field?
Yeah.
Okay.
And no 45, no other protection. Everybody else had to cover me. And they anticipated running into bunkers and things, and that's why, they had it with them. But
Yeah.
I never understood that because we had laws also which took the place of that.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were just out of it or it's just time to give the cherry something heavy to carry. I never really knew about that. But what they did when we got there, I had to pass it forward because it wasn't safe to get up and move forward. So we just passed it forward, and then a certain amount of people would carry extra rounds for it. But we wound up calling in airstrikes in the Phantoms. I was on the side of the LZ where they come in on the approach. You could see the guy's face in that Phantom. And he dropped just on the other side and drop a napalm, and that napalm would go off and it would just suck the air away from you. That was an experience.
And was the bunker still functional after that?
No, they got what they could of the bodies that they got out of there, but they broke contact, and some of that it's real fuzzy on what I remember of it. I can't remember how long we stayed there,
Right.
and I think we pulled off that hill back to another hill where we were able to secure it better, get high ground. But the DMZ was so open, you were a target because so much of napalm and Agent Orange that they had sprayed up there. You could almost, we was up there so close to the line, it's just like you painted a line down through there, and you see the green vegetation. Everything else was, the napalm was hanging on the trees. And
Yeah. Now, and when you're in the DMZ, can the NVA use artillery on you and stuff from their own territory?
they had some rockets. I don't know if it was artillery.
But not regular artillery? Okay.
No.
Because I guess we could still shoot at that.
Yeah, but there was enough NVA around that, they put up a good fight, and that bunker was really fortified. And that's the problem. You get into a position like that, and whoever's in the bunker always has the advantage.
All right. Now, as this stuff is happening, are you kind of, you learned the ropes well now? Are you kind of still learning the ropes? at this
Oh, I'm
point?
learning and learning quickly. And once we got out of that, there was an opening for a machine gun. I said, I'll take it. And not realizing the life expectancy of a machine gunner is probably what, like 6 seconds in a firefight.
Would you just have been trading in your, just going from rifleman to machine gunner, or were you still carrying around the 90?
Well, I think they wanted me to keep carrying that 90, and that was something I wasn't interested in. I didn't have any protection. That's all I had to fire. So if you come in, and it's happened later on in my tour, when you start getting in where you're almost hand-to-hand combat and you don't have anything, it's not a good feeling.
Right.
At least with the 60, and I knew the 60 guys, a lot of them would carry a 45 too. Then you have your assistant gunner that's got his M16. At least you have somebody to protect you.
Right.
And then with the 60, you have your own firepower with it. And I carried that gun from, I think, 70 of 1969 till late June of 1970. And I got to be pretty good with it.
All right. So now you're in the DMZ for a while, and then did you go back to Evans for a stand down or someplace else?
We worked at DMZ for a while, and then the monsoons were starting to come in, and we pulled back and stayed in like the first couple of ridge lines where if we got socked in, we could walk out and get resupplied if we had to. We worked out and worked the outer edges of the A Shau Valley.
And did you go to particular fire bases there?
As a fire base, I don't know which. We may have gone to was it Bastogne, O'Reilly, LZ Sally. There was a couple other ones we'd been at. When we got an opportunity, usually it would go in, you'd be, a couple of the companies would go in, and the other ones would work around that area, and we'd rotate in and out.
Right. Now so roughly what months would that be that you're doing this? Start at the end of the year, or?
Well, I'm trying to think. We were at November. I know Christmas we were just over the first ridge line, like around Rocket Ridge, because all the guys that went to see the Bob Hope show were all cherries they sent, and left the older guys in a field with the experience. Somehow I didn't think that was right, but I guess tactically that's probably what should have happened.
Now, by this time, by the end of the year, have most of the Hamburger Hill guys gone home?
They were starting to go, yeah. A couple of them hung over the first few months of the next year.
But you're now one of the established guys.
Yeah,
Just a few months in the field yourself. So
I already had hot LZs, hot firefights, and during those months it wasn't a daily thing happening. During the monsoons it tends to slow down somewhat. I don't know. Charlie didn't want to come out, or it's just when we wouldn't push too deep into the valley because you couldn't get resupplied. You get socked in. You don't know when you may get out of there.
yeah, and how good were the helicopters at getting stuff to you under those conditions?
Well, they did the best job they could do, but if you can't see, you can't see. And we had some points we were so high that you could see the fog below us. It almost looks like you're out on the ocean. And you could hear the chopper coming, but you never knew where he was coming. Almost boop, he'd pop up out of the clouds, and I don't know how he knew where he was at. Especially back in those days, they didn't have the technology that we have now with the GPSs and everything.
Yeah. All right. Now, from the period there, in the latter part of '69 and so forth, are there any particular incidents or things that kind of stand out in your memory, or one kind or another, being in some of these places, or as you get into the monsoon?
I hated the monsoon. I swore I'd never sleep on the ground again after going through those. The contact wasn't quite so heavy. The contact really cranked up in the spring when it really got hot.
Yeah, when you get into the Ripcord campaign and all of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, with the monsoon, okay, so if you're out in the field overnight during the monsoon, I mean, what do you do? How do you deal with the rain, or?
You just deal with it. I mean, you're wet, you're wet. Usually a poncho, you put it up and have it about only 3 feet off the ground, keep it as low as the ground into vegetation for concealment as you could. When you sat out for guard, you sat on your steel pot and got wet. and you stayed. My feet had gotten so wet. They called it emerged feet, where they turn white just from being in the water all the time. And they crack and start bleeding.
Right.
And it was hard to, you could carry a dry pair of socks and keep them in your ammo can, but once you pull those out, how you get the other ones dry? So you're waiting. And you didn't take your shoes off at night because you never knew when you were going to get hit at night. So it was just really uncomfortable.
All right. And was it common to get hit at night, or was it just a thing that just could happen anytime?
Some units got hit more at night for whatever reason. It just depends how many NVA would be in the area and what kind of troops they had, whether they were infantry or if you were near a hospital. Maybe they didn't have as many. They could have those underground hospitals we found once in a while. Might not be as many infantry around them because they're stuck in the ground and they hit pretty good. But yeah, it was when you get hit at night, it's really confusing. It's you want to make sure you don't shoot the wrong people, especially if they come in the perimeter. We used to work 6-man teams and set up ambushes, and you blow those, and you just hope there's only as many or less than of them as there is of you. It's not a lot of people for that to happen. And if they're very far away, sometimes you just let them walk through it and just call an artillery on them.
Now, how important was sort of the quality of your officers, your platoon leaders, your company commanders? How much of a difference did it make who you had?
Some were more gun-ho than others. Some were less.
I mean, who was your company commander when you got there?
Captain Haley, we called him Wild Man. He was West Point grad. Oh, he was wild. He was good. I mean, he knew his stuff. Then after him, I believe it was Captain Vasquez, was an enlisted man that came up through the ranks and took a commission. He was very good. Then after him, I believe it was Captain Hewitt, I think.
Yeah, Hewitt after Vasquez, yeah.
Yeah.
Now with Haley, if he's sort of a gung-ho, I mean, is there a negative attitude towards somebody like that? If he's too enthusiastic or wants to get into a fight?
Some people thought that. Maybe I did once in a while. He was pretty gun-ho, but that's what you expect that out of a West Pointer. Of course, those guys all enlisted. We're here and we're thinking, man, what are we doing here? So we have different, thoughts of what we're there for. We're just hoping to get back alive.
And then, did Vasquez do anything differently from Haley? Did he have
Vasquez?
Yeah.
He wanted done right, and he looked out more for the troops of not doing stupid stuff. Like take 6 guys in charge of battalion MBA. He was smart. He knew his stuff. We always felt very comfortable with him because he knew that he knew what he was doing. And he stood up. I think he stood up for it when he saw something stupid trying to be done higher up. I mean, there's only so much you can do, but he recognized it right away.
All right. And who did you have for a platoon leader?
Bob Wallace.
And what was his style?
Well, we liked him. He's a good friend of mine too. I'm trying to think. I think he might have been the first one. He was really good because he was Peace Corps background. He knew how to live in the jungle.
Yeah.
And but he was good. We used to kid him all the time about he was picking up bugs and looking at them and pieces of trees. But he was good. We called him Gypsy.
And where did that come from?
Well, sometimes we just didn't shave every day. Being in the field is just when you work 6-man teams or whatever. You're out in the field and you're out 90 days at a time. You don't see unless you knew the CO was coming in. But he was good, and he made sure we didn't do stupid things. And he expected things to be done right.
Right.
He just sometimes higher up has got different ideas and making decisions when they're not on the ground seeing what you're dealing with.
All right. Now we get So the monsoons slow things down for a while, and then you get around toward March, and at that point, the high command, on the one hand, they're planning the Cambodian operation, but they're also planning to try to go back into the A Shau. And first step of that will be setting up Fire Base Ripcord up kind of north of the entrance to it, and basically 2506 winds up kind of in the middle of all of that stuff.
Yeah, and I don't remember on part of that. We were on Firebase O'Reilly, I think, and after we come down, they had a meeting, and they come down and told us where we were going. That Alpha Company and Bravo Company was taking a good beating, and one night we had to hump off to help them. And that's the bad thing when you got to move at night. Always hated that.
How do you move at night? I mean, can you see anything?
Slowly. You never know what you're walking up on. They just hated that. But they told us we're going to go up on this Firebase Ripcord, and they expect heavy casualties in combat, and they're dug in. And we thought, oh. So Steve and I went, and Don Holhauser, we went to a chaplain services. We come out there scratching our head, and it was, everybody knew it was going to be bad. And we lucked out. That morning we walked in, or we flew into an LZ close to it and walked down up the other hill, and we come up the one corner of Ripcord, and we're thinking, all hell's going to break loose. And it didn't. And after we got up on it, a couple of rounds came in, and one of our fellows got killed digging up, when he was digging in position, he dug up I think it was a grenade. And we lost him. But it wasn't as bad as what they told us to expect, which it keeps you from being sloppy.
Yeah. Now, what did Ripcord itself look like when you got there? If you wanted to...
it was bare. It was just see, it had been a fire base before, so you have some of the resemblance of one, but because they had dropped airstrikes on it and everything else before. So, and I had really just found out last night that I think it was Alpha Company had tried to go up there, and Bravo Company, and I don't remember that part of it, us being told that had happened.
Yeah,
maybe that's where the information come from, that we were going to catch hell going up on it.
Yeah, because they both had tried air assaulting right onto the hilltop, and pretty much blasted off in both cases.
Yeah,
and that had gone on as early as March 12th, and now you're like a month later coming in for the third try, and but it's sort of thing where we look at it now, and you read the books, or you can put all the pieces together. Okay, this stuff all goes together, but you're in a different company in the same battalion. But if you're just a rifleman or a machine gunner,
we didn't get that info.
Yeah,
and I wish we would have. I still don't think we probably wouldn't have done anything different, because we were old timers at that point and knew to expect anything, and we made sure our weapons were clean. We had plenty of ammo, loaded up on grenades and extra ammo and things. The old timers, we didn't. We took it serious, but like I said, I think I still would have liked to have known that had happened.
Right. Now, once you get up to the top, what do you do?
Well, we started pulling a perimeter on it, and I can't remember what company was coming up the other side, and we took our sector. We knew from what side of the hill we were going to secure, because that's why we came up that side. We knew we was going to go from one corner halfway around the other, and the other company or battalion would come in, whatever, and we just started digging in right away as soon as we got there. As soon as they started plotting us on the hill what our area was going to be.
Now, was it dirt? Could you dig, or did you have to blast holes in rock, or what were you
I
doing?
didn't. There was a lot of rock. Yeah, it was hard digging. It was tough, and I had a tree that kind of went through it. And I don't know if we have any pictures of that or not, but a couple of guys that work on the hole, and a couple of guys that go out and they start putting up concertina wire. I mean, once we'd secured the hill, then the Chinooks started coming in, dropping artillery pieces. It's like building a city.
Right.
And I went up to work. They worked with the rigger bringing the crane, and he looked like a big grasshopper. And if you got out underneath of it and got that outer edge, it got that wash on the blade, man, it would just throw you down over the hill.
So you're talking about the sky crane, the
Yeah, the sky crane.
really big helicopter.
Yeah, they dropped in the heavy, big artillery pieces and some of the connexes and,
Okay.
and whatever they had to drop.
All right, because they were, a lot of the people will assume, I guess, the talk about it, well, Chinooks did all of that,
No.
but there were some Sky Cranes too.
Oh, yeah.
At least at that point. Maybe not when they were taking stuff off at the end, but.
I don't know, because we had, that was after 902, and then we were pushed off somewhere else. So I didn't see as far as when they took it off. But yeah, we had cranes because I worked underneath one of them with the rigger.
All right. Okay, so and did you just volunteer to do that as something different, or did you get sent up there?
I learned a long time ago not to volunteer for a whole lot in the Army. They were looking for a truck driver, and I got a wheelbarrow. You know, so I was a little hesitant. Now, depending on if my platoon leader, and they told me, a lot of times I knew, and to me that wasn't volunteering for anything. It was just something different you're going to do.
Right.
Now, if it was a choice between digging a hole or working up there, yeah, I'll go. That's not a problem.
All right, so you're going to get to be there. And now, if I've got this right, Vasquez himself was actually off on R&R the day that you walked up that hill, and he comes out and joins you right after.
Yeah, and I can't remember who was acting commander. It was probably one of our lieutenants, platoon leaders. I don't remember if it was Campbell or Lee, or I don't remember which one.
Yeah, but anyway, but it's not really your issue. You're there with your platoon, and you just kind of
We're doing what we're told, yeah.
Right, but then Vasquez gets up there and then starts laying out. So there's
Well, he made some changes, and I understood why he made them. He was pretty precise on detail, and he knew what he wanted. And that's what he expected to be done. And really, as we look back and saw some of the stuff he did, and we realized what the reasoning was for that. Now, some guys grumbled, but
yeah, but he's barely. But did you get it? I mean, what kinds of things would he do that would make it a stronger place?
well, you dig one hole here, and we want to move it over here, and you busted your tail getting that one done. Say, oh Jesus! Now I got to go over here and start doing it. It's just the way the military is. You have to be ready for change.
All right. Now, how long do you think you spent on Ripcord when you first got there?
I don't remember. It seems like we did all the hard work that he took us off,
Right.
and they put somebody else on. I can't remember. No, it may have been Bravo team, but I think the reason for that because they had taken casualties, and they needed to get some resupplied in, cherries and things.
And while you were actually building the base, did you get harassed at all by enemy fire, or were you left alone?
Oh yeah, a few rockets come in here and there, and we were busy. We just couldn't worry about that because we're busy putting our perimeters up, the concertina wire, tanglefoot, and we're building latrines. I mean, it was just you were worn out, and then now you're gonna pull guard duty at night, so you really, it was. That's why there's a reason they condition you. To keep you up half the night without any sleep, and there's reasons for it.
Now, once you moved off the base, do they just have you patrolling, or do they send you off?
We worked the ridge lines around it, just like 902 Hill 1000, and just everybody. We might work to the south and to the north and on into the west a little bit, and the other companies would be doing the same thing all around the other side of it.
Now, would you go, as you're moving around, would you kind of go back and forth to some of the same places, or did it always seem different?
Usually it was different, because we a lot of times if we thought we needed an LZ in an area, we'd be on an LZ cutting team, repel in and cut the LZ. But I don't remember. We could have, but I don't remember staying the same place at a different time. A lot of ground out there.
All right. Now, as you're doing this is kind of May and June of '70, before Ripcord really heats up. On a day-to-day basis, what was going on, or what were you doing?
We noticed that a lot more activity. We're finding Chuahoy pamphlets that they had dropped. This is after Kent State. As a matter of fact, I think Steve may have one of those. And steps up the hillsides, combo wire. We found a hospital. There was just signs. And at night you could hear traffic on the A Shau Valley, Ho Chi Minh Trail. That's a good indicator.
You mean traffic as in like motor vehicles?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, and so you're constantly calling in artillery and stuff to harass that area. Yeah, it was just signs, and you could smell. I don't know what it is, whether it's what they ate or what, but there's a scent, and you could tell that. Us older guys did anyhow. They'd been in combat and in different situations.
Now, were they avoiding contact with you?
Sometimes I think they were, just to do the build-up. Especially as I look back, I would say that's probably true. Because I think they were still pulling troops in down the A Shau Valley or down the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
And did you have some contact? I mean, did you get into ambushes?
Oh yeah,
firefighters,
we
or-
walked into an ambush, and one time, I don't know if it was ours or not, but it came down, they wanted us to have a cache of weapons, claymore mines, and dig them and bury them, because that's what they would do. Resupply would come in, out of North Vietnam, and they would bury the stuff, and the troops come in there to get it. Well, someone's idea in our battalion or division for us to do that. Well, then they got them, and they turned around and used them on us. Wasn't stuff that we had put our company, but there was an ambush, and I was a team leader and a gunner, so I worked a couple different positions there. To bring my guys down, and because one platoon had got wounded, and we're coming in around them, and we're crawling on the ground, and I'm looking up and I see a bunker, and I look up in the air and I got claymore mines facing at me out of the trees. I thought, oh boy, this is not a good place to be. And I notified them that there was a bunker, and I was going to throw a concussion grenade in there. And luckily they had gone. That was pretty typical for them to hit and run. We didn't lose anybody. We had quite a few wounded, and I never saw them again. They went on either to, Cameron or the hospital ship or whatever. And then we came back up the hill, and we were pulling on a B-52 crater. We couldn't get a medevac in because of the terrain. So Loach came in and put one skid on the edge of the bomb crater and teeter-tottered, and they were bringing guys up to put them in that Loach to get them medevaced out. Well, they sit there, I don't know if you remember choppers, they sit there like that, and then the blade will pitch down.
Yeah.
Well, he had a guy had his arm around him, taking him in, and one of our NCOs got hit in the head with a chopper blade. And I'm across the bomb crater pulling security, and when it got hit, the steel pot landed in front of me, and I thought his head was in it. And I looked down, it was empty, and I looked up again, and the guy had grabbed his head. It had ripped that steel pot, peeled it back like a can opener, and just cracked a liner, but it screwed everything up in his neck. And we never saw him again either. And they medevaced him out. But that's how, to get people out quickly, that's all we had access to. But I don't remember what month or the day that happened. I have to go back and look through the minutes, and some of the other guys may remember, but it was little things like that, and that's prior to Ripcord. And so we were, it was prior to July.
Yeah.
It's just things we saw more and more activity like that. We dug in positions and things.
All right. You're also having changes of command by this time too, right? Because
Captain Vasquez' time was to come out of the field, and I'm trying to think if we had one of the platoon leaders for a while, but then Captain Hewitt came in, and he's a nice enough guy. He was just that, at that time the military would put people in MOSs that it wasn't their MOS, and I don't think that was probably the best thing to do.
So he wasn't infantry?
No, he was artillery. I don't take anything away from him. I'm just saying, as you look back, because we had some platoon sergeants that came in that were supply sergeants. Because they're supply sergeant, doesn't make them platoon sergeant.
Right.
There's more to logistics, especially when you're in the field, to have someone in a position like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And then Lieutenant Wallace also rotates out, hasn't he?
Yeah, he got a job. I don't know if it was an S3 or what. He got. It was time for him to come out of the field too. We really hate to lose him. And I had forgotten about Lieutenant Liebig wound up being our platoon leader, and there's a portion of that we got overran. And there's part of that there's a lot I didn't know till like last year. What had happened.
All right, but he was pretty new at the point when the stuff on that.
Yeah, well, everybody's got to pay their dues. Everybody starts out young, and that's.
All right. Now you do get. You're out there. You're stomping around the bush quite a bit, but someplace in June you get a stand down. Do you remember that at all? Go back to Evans and.
If it did, it was been a short one. It'd been into maybe 0 weapons or something like that. It wouldn't have been very long. We could have. I just don't remember. Like I only remember being in Eagle Beach one time, and I think that was early into the tour. I think.
Yeah. Did you take R&R at some point?
Yeah, I went to Australia.
Okay. And do you remember when you went?
I think it's after we went up on Ripcord, like in the latter part of April.
Okay. All right. And how did that system work? I mean, do you get to pick where you go, or?
Well, yeah, you can pick, but time and country kind of dictated it. I think I picked at Bangkok, and I don't know, Hawaii was mainly for the married guys because they're bringing their wives over. But I got Australia, and it was interesting. It was, I was there quite a few months before I took an R&R, so I was due for it. I was ready.
And how did the Australians treat the American servicemen?
Good. The Aussies did. I made friends with a couple of Australian sailors, and they took me on ship and showed me their ship around. And it was good. The only people we had a little trouble with was the Harry Krishners. That was over there. But I don't remember anything other than that.
Mm-hmm. And how hard was it to get back on a plane to go back to Vietnam?
Tough. Especially because they had made contact somewhere, and when you were leaving, someone else was coming over, and so you might see someone else from your battalion. You may recognize them, even.
All right. Well, we kind of worked our way in your story now to the point where we kind of got pretty much through about June of 1970, and one of the big events for your company is going to happen on Hill 902 on July the 2nd. Can you kind of explain what was going on July 1st into the 2nd and what you were doing at that time?
What I recall on July 1st, we were just out humping around the ridge lines, and Ripcord had started to take a lot of rounds, incoming rounds, so they put us up on the high ground looking to see if we could spot where they were coming from. So that's why that piece of ground was so critical. That's why the NVA didn't want us on it. Mm-hmm. So they started rocketing as we were walking up on that hill, and then we started seeing where the smoke, where the rounds were coming. So we started calling artillery in on them. And it got to one point we even shot a log down there on top of them. Mm-hmm. It quieted that position down right away. So we're assuming we got that particular position. But we were calling airstrikes in. We were in an ideal spot up there. Mm-hmm. And for observation, we sat there all day and did that. Mm-hmm. And it got towards the end of the day there, and I asked the CO, I said, you have a new coordinates where we're going to move? Well, we always move, especially after something like that. And he said that we're not going anywhere. He said they want us to hold the hill. I said, excuse me? No. We can't do that. We need to move. I said, the disturbance we caused here today? He said, no, we got to hold it. We only had 2 platoons, and we were short anyhow. So I went back down. I told Steve and Don and all my positions, told them, I said, you need to dig in and fortify yourself. I said, we're going to be here tonight. It's not going to be good. Even though we had not seen anybody at that point yet, but we knew, just because we were aware of our surroundings getting to that point, what we found.
Yeah. And you knew that you had a sense that there were plenty of NVA around.
Yeah.
And you had, before that, every night you were always someplace different?
Yeah, we'd always move. We never stayed at the same place twice. Unless we pulled off, like even if it was just a pull, like if we was on a LZ and they were going to pull us off, we got socked in, we'd go back off that LZ and move to, if we were to the east, we'd go to the west, and just something different, because they mostly, the enemy knew where you were at, or they had a good proximity where you were at.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the way it is. And so that's one reason we always move, so they don't get too familiar exactly where you're at. You're in their backyard, they know their backyard.
Well, was 902 a place that other people had occupied before?
It's just an LZ.
Yeah, but so...
Yeah, someone had been there.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think in the capacity of what we were doing. I mean, it was at the point when they were getting rocketed, it was high ground for us to look down on other positions and trying to figure out targets. And so we'd shoot azimuth to an area, call it cobras in. We call this. So I'm sure we were a thorn in their tail side. So we fortified our positions, and Steve, he's 6'5" or 6. I mean, I'm just a little short guy, and Don's kind of tall, so our foxhole, we had made it to where it was stepped, so I could get a little higher because I was so short.
And did you dig a new hole for that night?
We didn't have enough time to dig another hole. There's a lot of rock there, so we fortified the hole we had.
Okay.
And that's where Don, Steve, and I were, which we were in front of the CP to the left just a little bit. Our fields of fire my gun position was on the trail. He's got a field of fire, and the CP was going to take a field of fire because we had such few people.
And it was kind of a long, narrow hilltop too, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So the CP might be in the middle, but it would still have a field of fire down a slope.
Yeah, well, yeah, because he was actually pulling as a position. Well, what we really needed was our other platoon, which was on top of Fire Base Ripcord.
Right.
We needed them out there so we could push out a little further, but tighten the positions up. But we did the best we could do with what we had.
Right.
But we fortified the positions, and we told all our other guys to do the same thing, and some did, some didn't. We had our ammo laying out, and we knew what we needed to do. We anticipated something happening. If it didn't, good training. We were ready for it.
So as best you remember it, what did happen? It got fairly late before they
Oh
actually...
yeah, it was somewhere like 3 in the morning. Steve was on guard, Steve Manthite, and our positions I was carrying it at the time because I'd given my gun up and the other guy was on it. I carried XM203, which is over and under M16 grenade launcher underneath it. So I'd put a shotgun round in it for close contact, and I kept it laying right beside me. I laid with it, my handle on a pistol grip, and Steve shook my foot and said there's movement in the perimeter. So I slid down in the foxhole, and I reached over to grab my steel pot, and just as I picked it up, started to put it on my head, the first RPG came in, which killed Captain Hewitt, and hit this rut sack and the CP and all that. And it happened so quick. When that round came in, I got hit in the head with a cans of I don't know, these beans and weenies, or it was one of the big B2 unit cans, and I didn't know what I got hit with until morning, and I found it in the sump with me. But and that's when all hell broke loose. Just we started blowing our claymores, and my gun was firing, and he didn't last very long. But the old man got killed on the first round coming in.
Right.
When that RPG came in, but they had satchel charges they were throwing, and they must have been in the perimeter before that. We think, we're not sure exactly where they came in. We know they didn't come in front of us,
Right.
but because Steve got hit in the back with a satchel charge, he threw it off of him, and it was a dud. It hit him and landed behind us on the foxhole, and he threw it off of him. And and when my gun quit firing, and I had to start covering those fields of fire for my corner, and but we fired up everything we had. It had gotten so bad that I'm cooking off grenades in the sump with us. That pull the pin, let the spoon flip, and count down, and throw them in front of you because they were that close. So they couldn't throw them back at us.
And do you get any kind of support coming in at any point, air or
We called for illumination, and they were short on illumination. They ran out of illumination. We had used all of our hand flares. We had shot off the red hand flares, the clear hand flares, and they started, some of the other fire bases tried to shoot illumination to us. It was short because they're being out of range.
Right.
So the illumination was kind of to, I guess that was to the south of us where some of that was coming in, and they shot some in from the ocean, from the ships. And they finally come out with the Hueys, start kicking out illumination with the Hueys. But the scariest part about it was you hear the Vietnamese out there talking. They're that close to us, and we can see the heads bobbing up and down. And they're talking, directing their people, you know, what to do. We couldn't understand what they were telling them. So we kept constantly firing and throwing grenades. We gave them everything we had.
And then how did it end?
A couple hours later, when it would come, when an illumination round would come in, even if it was the one that was off from us, it would stop for a minute, and then they would, as illumination would start to fade out, burn out, they would pop up, and they'd be talking. You could see their heads moving, and they were not much further than from that window from our position, maybe another half a distance from the room out from us.
And if you were firing, they should know where you were, right?
You know, I think about that all the time. We don't know how, I can't understand why we lived and so many other people died. Oh yeah, they definitely knew where we were at.
Of course, there were a lot of dud satchel charges the next morning, weren't there?
Yeah.
And you don't know what they came in carrying, too. If they're sappers, they might not have had a lot of regular weapons. I don't know.
Well, a zapper's not going to be carrying a weapon.
Yeah.
He's going to be all satchel charged. And the way we understood was like a company of zappers that hit us, and a company of infantry, you know, all the other support that they had. It was so close that the HE rounds on my over and under, the grenade has to have so many revolutions to go off. I had hit a guy with it, and it was still laying there. It didn't go off, but it took the side of his head out. That's just too damn close. And but when illumination, like I say, would start to settle down, and that's when they'd start hitting us again.
So does it really kind of end with daylight? Is that?
Yeah, we didn't get any support till daylight.
Yeah.
And they had gathered our platoon up, and you know, there's a lot of things when your support is on the fire base, and the choppers are in Camp Evans. You got to get those guys up and get them fired and get them in to pick something up, and that would have been suicide to come in at night, because they would have sat down right in the middle of the perimeter, and we had MVA in the middle of the perimeter, different places.
Right.
We didn't even know where they were at, because they're throwing stuff down from behind us, and you know, you don't just start turning around and blanketing the area with gunfire, because you're going to shoot your own guys. It's hard to figure out who was who behind you, because one of the guys come up on me, and his position had got knocked out, and I spun around, and I don't know what kept me from shooting him, that I recognized who he was. And it was a tough night.
Okay. And so the morning does come and support starts to come in. Then what happens with you?
My ears got perforated, and I couldn't hear very well. I could see your mouth moving, but I went up and started checking my positions, and found the old man, and I didn't know until, I guess it was last year, Lieutenant Liebig was had been on the other side of the hill and came over, and he's working with me picking up bodies. We're laying out ponchos, because at that point we didn't even have body bags yet. You know, we're picking him up, and he still had his glasses on. And we picked him up, and Bob Radcliffe and Bob Zoller, and just pieces of whatever we could find to try to let them match up. And to this day, I see a pair of hands helping me, but I don't see whose hands they are. And Bob came to me last year, was looking for me, and we sat there and talked, and he said, yeah, that was me, it was helping you. And I said, I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, he doesn't remember too much about some of that stuff either, because we talked to him last year. It's still.
You know, and I felt bad. I avoided anything with the Sergeant Berkey was with us, and he lived 38 miles from me, and he called me, and I knew he needed someone to talk to, and I hadn't accepted the fact that he needed that, and I just said, I don't want to talk about Vietnam. And I saw him last night for the first time, and I apologized to him. I said, I've been looking for you because I go to counseling, and I said, that's something I've got to do, is go talk to him. And as it was, he came here last night. And he said, yeah, you're very adamant you didn't want to talk about Vietnam. I said, well, I was in a different point in my life. I said, now I'm trying to face it and deal with it. And, you know, all of us went through a lot.
All right. Now, once you got the area policed, did they bring in reinforcements? Did they relieve you?
Yeah, well, we the last we met back out, we went out with the bodies because we were still walking, we were still functioning, we were trying to help some of the wounded and whatever else we could do, and we were patrolling through the dead NVA laying there. And but it was a tough time picking up your comrades, and you know you're only picking up pieces. Bad time.
Now, they just send you to Evans and leave you there? Did you get
We went. All they did was take care of us in the aid station. They kept us in for I think 2 days, and when we were back out in the field, and that's when we went to Gold 1000, and that's another story.
It is. So that's like about what, July the 8th, something like that. So,
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
So you have, because normally what happens is a company, if a unit gets hit badly, it's usually out for a while, and I guess you could take replacements. Did you bring in new guys?
Well, if they could get them, we combined platoons and
yeah, I guess at that point you
we
weren't
couldn't
getting
stay.
that-
We needed us in the field.
Right.
You know, if you could function at all, I mean, that's where you. We would rather have been there with them. You know what we had left, and so then they pulled us in. I can't remember if it was Alpha Company or what, but we went in to support, you know, to help them. War doesn't stop.
Right. Now you also got a new company commander in?
I think we had Captain Wilcox
Yeah.
for a while.
Yeah, Wilcox comes in to replace Hewitt.
He was good. Well, yeah, because Hewitt was killed. So, and when I left, I can't tell you if Captain Wilcox was my CO or not. The whole portion from July 1 to the end when I left is there's portions of it that I don't remember.
Yeah. Well, on July 8th, you get the orders to go and try to take Hill 1000.
Not alone.
No.
Yeah, we went over to support.
Well, D Company was going too, and one up each side, or at least that was the way the book does it, and the others.
Well, the
tell it.
side we went up on was the side, I think one of their medics was, someone had got, the point man had gotten killed, and got up there and there was a bunker, is what it was. And then the medic went up to try to help him, and then he got killed. Well, we're trying to extract the bodies off the hill, and when I came over, since there were so few of us, I was like the tail end, and as when they brought the body down, the medic, he's a pretty big guy that I remember, and they had him on a log, and they had him tied the feet and the hands up, and I can remember him going by me, and the blood still coming out of his head going by me, and we'd pull back. I call it a hasty retreat. People can call it whatever they want, but you know, it was so bad that we were peeling back and firing as we were walking backwards. Because what would happen, they called airstrike in, you know, the Vietnamese would run out the other side. When the airstrike was done, they'd come back up in the bunker again. Then you start back up the hill. Yeah, that was...
So did you know much about what was supposed to happen that day, or were you just following and going where you were supposed to?
Where we were supposed to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was part of the issue with that was that it was a very small number of men to take a well-fortified hilltop, and the other company didn't go up their side of the hill. So you went up one side and D didn't go up the other.
Well, we went up for support, and the one platoon was in front, or company was in front of us. Is someone come to the other side? I don't know.
Yeah.
I was never told.
Okay, because you had kind of had to hike kind of the length of the hill or alongside it before you went up it, or at least that's the way the various other versions of it go.
You know, I can't remember. For some reason, I think we went on Ripcord and walked off Ripcord to get to it
Yeah,
for support.
yeah. You might well have done that.
I think that's what happened. And where the other company was, I don't know, where they had to come in behind us and circle around and come up. We went up as we got there to support them. And now what the other company, what they did or supposed to have done, I don't know, because we weren't told everything.
Yeah. And at this point, this is just not very long after BL 902, and
No.
you're just trying to get oriented. Okay. Yeah, because basically what went on was that Wilcox refused an order to go back up after you had come back, and then he's gone.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Because that would basically, Lucas flew in and basically just fired him. So, so he was sent back to brigade.
Sometimes people just don't know when to quit, especially when it becomes higher up. It's easy to sit up in that higher position and say what they want you to do.
Right.
But when you assess it, when you're on the ground to assess the situation, it's a whole lot different. I mean, you see what's in front of you, what's possible, and what's not possible to be done. You know, me, I'd drop every damn bomb I could to keep from put another soldier up there and lose another one. And that's probably what Wilcox was thinking.
Yep. That was what he said pretty much.
And I don't know whether that's because I had so much time in country, or because I was a squad leader. I can't answer that, but if that's the thinking, it's odd. And, you know, I guess in leadership positions, that's when you're responsible to the guy to do this. You know, you don't want to have someone do something you're not willing to do yourself.
Right. Yeah. So you're going through, and then things get worse for Ripcord through the next week or so in July, and so there's a lot of fighting going on, like July 21st, 22nd, and 23rd, they evacuate. And right there toward the end, your company is back involved trying to help some other units that were in bad shape. Were you part of that, or do you remember going back into some of those hills and valleys?
Steve tells me I was. I don't remember. You know, I think we were subjected to so much in such a short period of time. One fight was the same as the next. It was just you move on, you do here, and that's what the military trains you to do. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that because the mission has to continue.
Yeah, and then you weren't there too much longer after that, were you?
No, I left August 17th, I think.
Okay. And how long did you stay out in the field?
I think I came in 2 days early.
All right.
Wasn't very long.
Now, after the Ripcord evacuation, was there much more activity, or was it quieter, or do you not really remember?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I know when I come in, Top sent me back to the field with the XO to pay guys, and they got hit that night. And everyone said, "What are you doing back here?" I said, "Well, I come out to help pay you guys." We got hit. And I said, "That son of a bitch, you didn't tell me that." You know, when you get that short, you know, it was bad enough my last night on the bunker line. I was NCOIC of the bunker line, and the sun comes up, and we're facing Rocket Ridge, and I'm telling the guys goodbye and everything, and we got rocketed from Rocket Ridge into the fuel pad behind me. I thought, well, you guys just aren't going to give up till I'm gone.
Let's see, a couple of kind of broader questions now. In your whole time, you're pretty much operating in areas where there's not really any civilian population?
No.
Yeah, so you're not kind of seeing that
No
side
questions.
of the war.
No questions.
Yeah, free fire zones. Did you notice much issues with things like people using drugs either in the bases or on the field? Did you see any of that?
Smoking weed in the rear, and there was some guys that I had to go with the MPs to weigh to bring back a guy that had strung out on heroin. He was, I think he was in a mess hall or something. He'd been a real problem.
Yeah.
But I never saw anything like that. I never saw any weed in the field either, but there was guys that would smoke weed in the rear a little bit, and, of course, I mean, the rest of us were drinking, so.
All right, I mean, were there issues with race in the units, or?
As a close unit with us, I never saw it, but when you come in for a stand down, there was some of that, and not a lot of it. I mean, I respected the guys we had in our units they were no different. Wasn't no race issue, but it seems like peer pressure. When they'd all gather, next thing you know, you'd see them over there with them, and where they were doing just to kind of fit in with them too. And, they call us crackers, and but I had a platoon sergeant that was a black guy. We call him Sugar Bear, Sergeant White.
Yeah.
One of the best guys we had.
That was the one that sort of got Lieutenant Wallace oriented too.
Oh yeah. Yeah, he was good. And our first sergeant was black.
But you didn't really spend a whole lot of time in the rear either, so you're
No.
you're not having to deal with whatever might be going on back there.
Usually 90 days at a time in the field. When you came in for a stand down, you may come in. I was in a hospital. I had bronchitis once. I was in a hospital, and as soon as I was on light duty, I was on the bunker line, and I said, "Stop! Send me to the field. Let me go back." But we didn't spend much time in the rear.
All right, so now you come back out of the field, just sort of a couple of days left, and then how do they get you physically out of Vietnam? From Camp Evans, what do you do?
I caught a Chinook. I don't know if I took a C-130. They may have taken me to Camp Eagle, and they may have consolidated and sent us down on a C-130. Because I flew in through Long Binh, and I flew out through Cameron, coming back.
And did you have to hang around long at Cameron, or did you get out quickly?
No, I got out pretty quick. I mean, I got there like in the morning, and I think early afternoon I was gone.
All right. And what was the mood like on the plane flying out of Vietnam?
Quiet.
Okay.
It was quiet. We flew from Cameron to Dakota Air Force Base in Japan. It was Flying Tiger. It used to be known as strictly cargo, and they had made some flights and chartered them. Man, that guy hit the runway and boom, boom. I thought, oh God, don't kill me now.
Yeah.
I'm almost there. And then the rest of the flight was good, and I flew to Fort Lewis, Washington.
Okay. Now you get to Washington. Are you going to be discharged at this point, or do you have to go someplace else?
No, I came home for 30 days and went to Germany. I still had time left.
Okay, well, to Germany. Man.
Yeah.
Okay, so how much time? Did you re-enlist it or extend it? Or what?
No, my ETS wasn't until April when I come home in August.
Okay.
And usually Germany and Korea would be like an 18-month tour.
Right,
And they
right.
didn't. But Germany, I don't know if you ever met Howie or not. Howie was one of our RTOs, and I go into Battalion Augsburg, Germany, and his eyes got real big. It had been reported I had been killed. And he thought he saw a ghost when I walked in. He's here this weekend too. I was talking to him. But I spent time in Augsburg. Went to Oktoberfest. Went to St. Moritz, Switzerland skiing.
So what actual job did you have while you were in Germany?
I was infantry. I was in the squad leader in the 1st Infantry Division. Big Red One.
Right. And did you do much with them? And were they on exercises or things?
Yeah, mechanized infantry. We had APCs, and we went reforger problem. And we have alerts every once in a while. Matter of fact, I didn't sooner got there. They was on alert something there in Egypt. There was something going on, and we went on maneuvers with the German Panders, and some of the people come over from the States, and they had a reforger problem, and then we got way up by the Czech border, and then we rail headed back into Augsburg. It was a good time.
And what kind of attitude did the Germans seem to have toward American soldiers at this point?
Some were good, some were bad. There was some more racial tension in Germany than what there was in Vietnam. They had some issues there where they were throwing hand grenades in the mess hall. So I stayed away from the mess hall. Usually went to the NCO club and had lunch and dinner or whatever. But sometimes the military guy will cause their own problems when they get drunk, But overall, they treated me good. I never had any issues with them.
All right. So then you get to through August of. So let's see Okay, so you get out there to Germany in September.
Yeah, about September.
September. Okay.
Because I was home 30 days.
Yeah. All right. Then how long did you wind up spending in Germany?
I stayed there till January 1st.
Okay.
Because I got a 90-day drop. I put in for school and got it, and I got a 90-day drop.
Okay. So the original plan was going to have you in there a little bit longer and stay in Germany longer, and then you made it shorter, or?
Well, I had applied for school, and my dad had been sick when I was in Vietnam, and he almost died, and I wanted to spend time with him.
Yeah.
So I actually had gone to the Pentagon trying to get stationed stateside so I could get home and see him more often, and they turned me down. So I applied for school and got it. So I went back to school.
Okay. And where were you going to school then?
Kent State branch in East Liverpool.
Okay.
That was a little different because with the protesting and everything went on at Kent State, I kept real quiet about, that was the early stages when you start keeping quiet what you did or that you're military or whatever.
Yeah. Now, when you were coming back to the States, either through Fort Lewis or when you came back from Germany, did you run into protesters in the airport, or did you do things like change clothes?
No, I did. When I went to Vietnam, though, I ran into them in Oakland, outside the processing points there.
So you saw them on the way out.
Yeah.
Okay, most people see them on the way in. But
A lot of the guys did see him on the way in. Being from a small Midwest town, it wasn't going to be so prevalent. I guess I could have saw him in Washington, but it was raining and foggy, so
yeah.
they don't like to go out in the rain,
Right.
They may have been there and I just didn't see them.
Okay, but now you're coming back, and pretty quickly you're in college, where this is a branch campus of Kent State, so it's not the main one where the actual shooting or whatever took place, but still it's Kent State, and it's American College in 1971.
Yeah, but it's more kids I went to school with that were there. It wasn't like other campuses where you got people from all across the country coming.
Right.
So that probably made a big difference.
But you weren't really talking to people about.
No, I didn't talk to
Vietnam
anybody.
or anything.
And when I talked to the guys in my hometown, they were all coming home about the same time. We got together and so you kind of change. I had some guys when I come home that they were concerned with how many gooks did you kill? They didn't give a damn how I was, how I'm actually doing, anything you can do for me. So that's when I started to pick different people to run with. And so we wound up running with the guys. Being in the military has always been my comfort zone, and because I re-enlisted after a while, went into reserves for about 6 years, and I realize now why I did that. That was my comfort zone. It's still my comfort zone. I do deliveries on Camp Lejeune. I go to Fort Bragg, and those guys. I got a 101st license plate on my vehicle, and shit, they treat me great. And it's my comfort zone.
And so what line of work did you go into?
Well, when I came out of the military, I went back, plus going to school, I went and worked for that company I left from, Homerlock in China. Then I went to a small chemical company. Then I went to Quaker State Oil and worked at Quaker State Oil for 16 years. Worked in the refinery and went through the packaging plant. I went out in the processing units. I did most everything in there. Licensed tankerman, flow petroleum on barges. And then I left there and came down here and started not here, I think I'm in Raleigh.
Yeah.
In Raleigh, North Carolina, and I had a business for 23 years.
And was that where you were making deliveries to Fort Bragg or things like that? Yeah.
And I'm a contractor now. My wife had gotten sick. I wanted to spend more time with her, so I sold the company. And then she passed away, and then so I still work as a contractor. So I go to all those places. I really look forward to it. Sometimes I start having flashbacks. I'm thinking when I see Hueys, like Camp Lejeune, the Marines are still flying the Hueys and the gunships. And but I feel that camaraderie when I'm in there. I just feel that way.
Yeah. I guess to look back at that whole time you had in the service, what do you think you took out of it that might be a positive?
I think leadership, discipline. you know, I am who I am, whether you like it or not. It helped shape me. I mean, I still box my corners on my sheets, and you know, sometimes I can be real fussy about lining things up, really crazy stuff like that. But I think I'm a good person, and I've got some hot button issues that I feel, you know, the politics of any war, you know, and as I see the things conflicts we're involved in now, and how much they're looking like Vietnam, and how people treat the military, and that keeps me fired up.
Do you think they at least treat the military better now than they did 40 years ago?
Somewhat, yeah.
What issues do you still see as kind of out there?
Just like more worried about the enemy, how they're trying to perceive us as being, just like that one fellow that was killed, that, you know, giving the Marines and not giving them weapons. You expect them to be out there and, you know, being in a country, oh, you can't drink beer in our country. You can't, you know, you got to have your head covered for a woman, and this other stuff. It just bugs me. You know, it's just the politics in general. It ain't any better. No matter what side it's on. It's either side of the aisle. They're both. And I just see it come back as being Vietnam all over again when it comes to that. I feel bad for the military guys being in there.
Yeah, and then there's also the part where, you know, when they ended the draft, do you think that was basically a good thing, or do you view that as a good thing now, or?
I think they need to draft, because I think the kids these days have it too easy, too cushy. And yeah, I didn't particularly want to go, but I had nothing else. And if I had applied myself, is what I should have done, but I didn't do. I can't blame anybody on that but myself. And they've got some good people in the military. I mean, and I'm surprised when I go in to brag and all that, and then I see the girls that's in there and this and that and the stuff they do. I'm thinking, you know, more power to them. But I think when it comes down to it, because, you know, I hate to see these guys have to do constant deployments. I think you need some more people in there.
Yeah, and if there were a draft, then the public would pay more attention before they start wars.
The public may. I don't think the politicians would.
Well, it depends on the politician, but it might change the equation. It's like they ended the draft because of Vietnam, and then they decided just sort of not to go there, because then if you just have regulars and guard and reserves, then that's all volunteers, and you get away from whatever kind of backlash there would be for a draft.
There's good and bad. You have, I hate to say you have a better quality of person in there now. You have less people go to jail or go to the military. You get that segment out of it. And yeah, I think that needed to be gone. Although we had some good guys, but I don't know. I'm kind of mixed feelings on the draft. I sometimes I think they need it, mainly because I'm still kind of a hard person that I think you need the discipline.
All right. Well, you tell a good story. And I would like to close this by thanking you for sharing it today.
Thank you.
All right.